You're not the only one. I only say these things because probably 90% of the guests I've had on, it's their first experience with Twitch, and they really don't quite understand it sometimes. So it's a good experience for anyone getting into that space, and it's a global audience, and we're live. So unlike a podcast or something, it's not going to be static. There is conversation, so we already have people chatting. Ninja Wolf is on there, already starting to chat. So hello, thanks for being here. We are going to be talking about science and games, and some game design, and it should be a good conversation. And we were already talking about the crazy stuff that we do sometimes to get play into the classroom. And I'll get crazy ideas. Like you were talking about, Jen, going out and like buying a whole bunch of stuff or finding stuff at garage sales. And you're like, oh my God, this is great. And you bring it in. And sometimes it's a dud and sometimes it's great, at least for me.
Yeah, sometimes like you just need to iterate a couple times. Like it might not be fantastic the first couple times you even like trying to bring a game into the classroom. I know the one that I sent on Discord earlier today, that touching Triton one. Yeah. I had no idea how hard that was the first time I played it in the classroom. And then like I tried it with kids and it was awful. But the second time it was great. And it just kept getting better after that because you just learn more about what you're trying to do. Yep.
Agree with that. So it is, and I think those iterations are important for games and for play. I know a lot of times I'll buy a bunch of stuff and I'll bring it to school and I'll have it for a certain lesson, but then I'll be like, oh, that didn't work. And it'll just stay in my closet. But then later that year or 2 years, I'll have like some kind of, epiphany. I'll have, that light bulb come on. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have those things and I could do it for this other thing. And you suddenly start going down this path. There are a few things I find that keeping in your room, you can use over and over again. Like I have a bag of Matchbox cars and sometimes you're doing physical science. Sometimes you just need something that rolls and something that's fun that kids can get a hold of. Yep. There you go. I mean, you almost have enough to like every kid can have their own, so you never know.
It's really funny though when kids start to, you have kids for more than 1 year too, right?
Yeah, we're a small school, so I'll see them in 8th grade, I'll see them in 9th grade, and then depending on what I'm teaching.
Do you find that they like remember where you keep stuff?
Oh yeah.
And then they're like, oh, I want that thing.
They know where I keep my Play-Doh.
Oh gosh. Play-Doh is the worst. That's like my least favorite thing.
I have it for when I do like one of my physical changes is Play-Doh. And we usually do the Play-Doh thing at the beginning of the year, the Dave Burgess thing where you make your summer out of Play-Doh or whatever, and then you have to share it. I usually did. I didn't do that this year, of course.
Play-Doh in the first place. Totally. Yep. That's why I bought it in the first place, was to do that activity. And then it I would find little weird Play-Doh creatures in my classroom, that they would leave me as presents. I was like,
that's cute. That's nice. What I usually always find from the beginning of the years, I would do the marshmallow challenge, and I would find spaghetti. I kid you not, all year. It would be the last day of school, and I would be like, "Is that a piece of spaghetti?" Yep.
I mean, there are worse things.
Yep. So that's kind of funny. The funny stuff we do as teachers when we go and we buy crazy stuff for crazy labs, especially when it comes to games. Like you'll go to a store and you'll see a game yard sales, and we're like, oh yeah. And that's one of the things I miss right now. It's like I would usually do that and bring it to school for either my gaming club or for the classroom, and it's like I'm touching nothing. I can bring in nothing. I don't even have kids right now in person. I'm like, kind of like your wings are clipped.
Yeah. That was definitely one of the concerns that my new teachers had, was like, how can we do this when we can't touch anything, and like they can't share pieces? Like, all they want to do is sit around a game of Evolution and just let them play, and you can't.
Nope. You got to find alternatives instead. So, but that's why we're here as creative minds, kind of brainstorming together, thinking thoughts. Maybe good will come out of this conversation, or someone in chat will have something they can add as well about, games that they do and they like to try out. We got a couple of games I'll try to play tonight. And that'll be interesting. I don't know how long it'll take to play it. And the later it gets in the night, the harder it'll be, because I'm super multitasking. As I try to chat with you, play a game, and at the same time stream. I know other people have done it, but depends on how much sleep I have and and everything else going on. So I by the way, I did get a COVID test today. So I did get one. So hopefully I am not positive, because that would suck. But I'll be done with my quarantine by should be Monday. Monday's my last day.
Is your whole school quarantined, or?
Nope, just those that required the contact tracing, and the whole 8th grade is out because they just couldn't. There's no subs because pretty much all the teachers are, quarantined. So that means you're teaching from home. Congratulations.
Right.
So, it's been good though. We have some fun. The one thing I wanted to do is, and I played this last night on Sight Queen's stream, the Jackbox games, where it's kind of like, it's a really interactive, fun bunch of games that you can play with other people, a la Kahoot, Gimkit kind of style, where they all kind of go into a game. So I wanted to try that, because I can do that now that I'm on my own computer and my own network. I don't got to worry about the filters, and I don't got to worry about the school computers not liking it, and I have Steam. So I'm looking at the benefits of teaching from my basement.
Yeah. Which ones have you tried so far?
I haven't tried it. I think we played on her stream. We played 2. I think it was 2 or 3. I can't remember. I haven't played too much of them yet. I just kind of wanted to get a little experience with them, because I know my kids have talked about them. I've had very little experience myself with them, so I wanted to get a little more experience. How about you? You're familiar with them? You sound like you're fairly familiar.
Yeah, our lab that I work for at UW, ever since we started like having to work remote, because we were a very social lab. We like each other, to talk to each other, and we don't get to do that a lot anymore. So every week we actually like have a dedicated hour for game time, and so we just go in and all are on a Zoom call. And so because they're so easy to play like that, we've been doing a lot of Jackbox games. I don't know if Drawful is a Jackbox game, or if that.
I've heard of that one too.
Independent thing.
Yeah.
Drawful is a lot of fun. It's pretty hilarious.
Right.
And then I think last week they played Among Us. I still haven't played Among Us.
What?
I know.
How do you? I had students that messaged me earlier today, and they're like, "Mr. Bud, do you want to play Among Us?" Of course, they just wanted me there so they could kill me immediately. I'm like, really, guys? It doesn't matter who was the imposter. Mr. Bider was the first one dead. I'm like, I appreciate your kindness in inviting me to take out your frustrations on your teacher. I'm like, come on. Oh my gosh. Then I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm gonna get a COVID test.
At least you know that like they thought enough about you to invite you. Like that's an honor in and of itself.
I know. I don't mind. I kind of it's funny, you know. And we'll see. You know, they've been doing it. They're a couple of, because we'd been playing Among Us during, like, I would schedule breaks in class. Honestly, the entire class is a break. All we do is play games. So, and so like we would play Among Us, and you know that's where I got most of my experience from. And kids are pretty good at it. I'm kind of like, yeah, you know. So, yeah, I'm surprised you have not played that yet. Of course, you're probably surprised I hadn't played Jackbox yet. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it has to do with like we either have like way too many people or too few. And whereas like at least with Jackbox I feel like you can team up and it's still amusing. Right. I don't know if you can with Among Us.
You really can't. I mean, you have to have your 10 people, and that's about it. Whereas Jackbox, you can have the audience vote, I guess is what it is. So you're still participating. Because I was wondering, like, if I did it with students, I had some concerns, and maybe you can help me puzzle this out in my mind. One, making sure everyone feels like they're participating if they want to participate. Right? That's important. Two, some of the games downright encourage, like, inappropriateness. And with 8th graders, they don't need encouragement. Right? Anything, even if it requires drawing, okay? No, I don't need like a whole bunch of phalluses.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think the worst of 8th grade. I've just been teaching it for 20 years, so I kind of know the 8th grade mind. So so those are my concerns. I know there are some games that you can play that are less on the lines of, I'm going to put in appropriate things and post them, so maybe you can educate me as far as, which ones might be good for school.
I feel like most of them are like that, though.
I know, that's why they're so fun. Because everyone deep down is an 8th grader.
There's like that certain level of openness, right? I mean, there's one that's like a little known fact.
Mm-hmm.
And those, I feel like it's harder to be just totally wacky.
Yep.
But still, like, some of the questions even, you're like, what? That's a real thing? Okay. But yeah, definitely not the news one. That one's awful. Because it also, like, it references player against player.
Okay.
So it starts you with a prompt that's like, what does this picture make you think of about this other player?
Yeah, that's bad.
And then, like, you have to write a headline, and then the next person gets that and has to respond to it. It's like the How to Win the Internet is the name of that one. Probably would not go so well in class.
No.
It's pretty hilarious as, like, a party game, but yeah.
Right. Yep. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of like what I was thinking. I'll have to do a little more research. I'll have to buy a game. Go figure. The thing is, there's like 5 different Jackboxes, so I'm like, which one would I get?
Yeah, there's a couple different different party packs.
Yep. So I will have to. I'll do some research. And this is the best part of like our jobs. Even you can agree, right? It's like, I'm gonna have to do some research. Time to play some games.
Right.
I chose the right career.
Yeah.
I have to go to work and play some games.
It combines like all the best things. That's what I have been loving about the project that I'm working on right now. That I literally get to spend. So part of my time is like, let's develop new challenges for this game, like new jobs. And the other part is let's research really cool life science that we can turn into jobs for the game.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, it was actually just like, go play a bunch of games that are underwater. because that's where like our setting is going to be.
Right, and that's the one, the Aqualab. Is it that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't quite look like Subnautica. I'm just putting that out there.
No, not quite. Is that the one where the start of the game is that like you're in a ship crash?
Yeah.
Because I surrendered. I don't know why I was so bad at that game when I started playing it that I tried, like, I wound up just walking around the ocean. I gave up to the whole, like, I think the storyline, you're supposed to get back on the ship and try to put the fire out. And every time I tried to do that, I died. So I just said, forget it. I'm just going to wander around the ocean forever. Like, this is life now.
That sounds like something I would do. I am the, hey, Montestemius. Welcome to the chat. We're talking about games. Particularly, we're talking about playing games. Now, Jen, you're familiar with the Bartle test, correct? All right, of gamer type. Yeah. So what type of gamer are you if you do the Bartle test?
I don't even know.
What, you didn't take the test yourself?
No, I didn't.
What? Oh, geez. I have my kids take it. I've been having my kids take it every year. I'm an explorer almost entirely. So that thing about like, forget about the ship and the plot. I'm just going to go explore the seafloor. Yeah, that's like me. You know, like Skyrim, I just wander, you know, and quests. If I complete one, sure, but I'm just going to wander around and see what there is. You know, but as far as the Bartle test, I think is interesting. I believe that gives you more insight into the learning personalities of kids than their supposed learning styles, which are fictional as well. Okay. But Bartle test, it's like the way a kid is going to approach a game and play a game tells you a lot about how they're going to approach a lesson and, you know, work through or play a lesson. That's just my own personal philosophy. Hey, Chris, thanks for being here. Daily Science is in the chat. How exciting.
Hey. Yeah, so here's the reason why I like can't pick one, right? Like, I suppose there's probably a like multiple choice test I should go, but like
yes,
when I look at them, here are the two ways that I like usually am playing a game. I'm either the person who, like, in the cooperative game, we're at the final stage and there's a moment where I can just do something really epic, and it's gonna have a like probably not even 50-50 odds of it ending up being a good thing, but it's gonna be really cool if it does go well. I'm always gonna go for that one option. So, like, even if it could ruin everything we've worked towards, which I think would probably put me in like the killer category.
Yep.
Like, because it's definitely more along that line. But I play a lot of D&D.
Yep.
And I'm definitely the one to like go wander off into the woods. And just like go poke and see what's around.
Yep. I found that for a couple of years when I was doing it, most 8th grade boys are killers. Go figure. You know, but it's not always the case. But it's interesting to know as you design the lesson to know what they are, just because you also know how to frame your reward system within your lesson or game that you're planning. You know, and I used it to make teams or groups. I would try to get different player types in different groups, you know, to make sure that, you know, I just didn't get a group of killers. They would just goof off and try to game the system and probably cheat off everybody else or whatever, you know. So try to separate them out as best you can. And, you know, and I think it helped, at least for my perspective taking.
Yeah, that makes sense. That it would be really helpful. A lot of times we actually, like, as we're looking at our game analytics, we're looking for those different like avenues for kids and making sure that there's a way for everybody to engage with it. So like in Lakeland, there are even achievements for the killers who just want to destroy the lake as quickly as they can, right? Like if you can get the epic algae bloom, you're still golden.
I mean, there's something to be said for that too. In order to know how to stop something, you got to know how to cause it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And so, why don't you, especially since Kristen's here, she can listen to your story. Tell us like what you do at the University of Wisconsin, what your program is, and exactly what your plan is.
Yeah. So I'm a first-year PhD student at UW-Madison, and I'm in curriculum and instruction. And I'm in a little like offset part of that program that's called Design, Informal, and Creative Education. And so I work for a lab there that's called Field Day Labs, which is we do a lot of educational games that are browser based, but like they actually started more in the AR VR realm with a product called Eris, and did a lot of work around that. We do VR games. Depending, most of them are like installation type VR games, so like for museums and things like that. But my role there right now is actually working on helping to design and produce a game called Aqualab, which is in its like super initial stages. We're like finally at the point of having a prototype that is live on the internet, and yeah, it's a blast. The concept of the game is basically all around science practices, so trying to get students to really like invest in how do scientists investigate questions out in the world and like in ecology. How cool am I? I don't know. I don't think I'm that cool. My kids, like my students never thought I was that cool.
Yep. Well, I put the Aqualab game screen up so people can see it. You can tell it's very much in beta. You still got all the like the coding right. Script and all the other weird stuff on it. I did play through it as much as I could.
Yeah. Did you scan the weird otter that is now currently just like a random picture?
Right. And that's one of the things I liked about it. I'm like, they haven't put the graphic in yet. That's great. I kind of like just the picture of the otter float.
Yeah, our developer who's done a lot of the art for it was like, she tried real hard to draw an otter and then was like, you know what, this is not my forte.
Yep. And I do like the intent here as far as going with the new standards and having it go through that observation all the way through the argumentation. I could, I as a teacher and a gamer, I could see exactly where you were, going with it. And how you were trying to incorporate those different pieces, and it's not easy to do that.
Yeah, that's been the hard part, is trying to think of how to make those cohesive so that they do flow into each other. Initially when we first started talking about it, we were like, well, maybe they're just a bunch of mini games. Like there's an experimentation mini game that a student does, and then like there's a separate argumentation mini game. And I sat there and I was like, but like, how do you have an argument without having something to argue from? And it just seemed like it wouldn't work unless we actually drew all of those mechanics together and had them fit into a more cohesive game. So this is showing just like one iteration of it. The eventual goal is that there will be like multiple jobs. Students will be able to go out and explore a map and lots of different ecosystems and kind of travel with their boat, level up their ship. And
right, I kind of got that feeling when I was playing it because, the characters weren't well introduced. You're kind of just like thrown in there. and they referenced the boat, but you couldn't go to it. So it's kind of like there's a lot of pieces, that aren't together, yet.
Yeah.
And I also, agree. We were talking about that, the argumentation. Well, yeah, you have to have the evidence to argue from. And it kind of one thing feeds into another all the way back to your initial phenomena or, observation that you're making. And that's the way,
Yeah, exactly.
science is done. So it makes sense. Yeah, your kids don't know how cool you are.
Like, that's it. I mean, don't your students also, they're like, wait, you're a real person outside of school? Like, do you ever get that?
I don't get it as much as I used to, because I kind of like dispel that myth the first day, because they walk into my room and they'll see, my tags from going to PAX East. Automatically, they're just kind of like, you went to PAX? It's like, yeah, doesn't everybody? And then they're like, at least the gamer kids, which is a lot of them, are just kind of like, oh, and then I have my, my lanyard from like an anime convention, and they're like, you went to an anime convention? I'm like, yeah, doesn't everybody? And they're just going, oh, okay. And so like it automatically, it's kind of like, I think most of us, that do the IT lab are kind of like, kids know that they're not in the same kind of class right away. They kind of know they're in someplace different. And that's kind of the vibe I kind of give off, I guess. I don't know if you're the same way, but
Tried to do that. I would have pictures of my horses up, and I actually, as far as like console games, I've been super into Halo. Like, for years I've been super into Halo. And so I would have like my little Halo, they're not even Lego, what are they, Mega Block
oh yeah,
figurines, like hanging out on my desk. And they're like, why do you have those? Well, because I like them. Why do you have anything you have? But yeah, they would still, and then they'd be like, well, like, I want to play against you. Like, I need to find you. And it was, yeah, not quite as easy for them to do back before Xbox Live gave everybody on a console, because we would only pay for one Xbox Live subscription.
Right.
So it was never my name that got to be the account holder.
Right.
I was always guest.
Yeah, there you go. Chris said, unpacked a box today with Baby Groot and Deadpool Funko Pop. There you go.
Yes.
I mean, that's one of the things you got to start doing. Like, if you're a teacher and you're like streaming, from home or from school, get that shelf of like Funko figurines, in the back. Kids will be like, what am I watching Twitch or am I watching my class? What's going on? I have an Einstein Funko in my classroom. I got Steve Irwin backing me back there. So.
Yes.
So, anyways,
oh, go ahead.
Do you want me to play through some Aqualab for everybody, or do you want me to play through Lakeland, or do you want to go through both and talk about it?
Ooh,
or
that's a tough call. Up to you. I leave it up to you. You haven't played Lakeland though.
All right, we'll do Lakeland first. We'll switch over to that.
And that one's actually done. So
okay.
It's actually released.
All right. So I'm there. I'm gonna click play game, and of course it opens another window. I'll throw it above this one. Resize it. Bam. All right. There we go. And I suppose I will make a new game. Oh, there we go. Next.
Right. Yeah, it's super dramatic how it starts.
Never put it near a lake. People love them lakes. Okay.
Yeah, you have to fully own the Wisconsin-ness of this.
There you go. Ringo moved into your town. Oh, Ringo. Nice.
Yeah. This is funny. So it started out, it was just the Beatles' names as the people who could live in your town. And shortly thereafter, I was playtesting with a group of kiddos, and our developer for this came with, because it was like some summer camp on UW's campus that was like an engineering camp. And so just for amusement, he was like, all right, like, you want to put your name in the game? And it's all just coded in JavaScript, so super easy. Opens up GitHub, throws all their names in, and like never went back and changed it. So we'll see if you get to another house in the future, who you get that time.
Now is time passing right now as I'm like listening to you chat?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Hey, Ringo,
So
eat your food.
pretty good about like not letting you keel over or letting anything bad happen while you're still going through the tutorial.
So it's a little forgiving in that way.
Yeah.
There you go. We got a farm.
Yeah.
Oh,
Going right along, making some corn.
all right, now this is like playing Surviving Mars, except I'm surviving Lakeland.
Pretty much. I saw that. I really want to play that Surviving Mars.
I've been streaming it every Friday.
Nice.
That's a relaxing game like this. It's just kind of like you're chill. You just kind of put stuff down and make people happy, or kill them.
Right. That was
Holy
the original
buckets!
food in it. What?
It said holy buckets. Look at all that food. That's funny. There's more to life than lakes and farms. If you want to grow your town, you need money. Okay, step one, pause the game. Okay, done. Now click some corn and sell it. Okay, sell. There you go, easy as pie. No, it's easy as corn. Okay. Alright, he'll export the corn, good. Good, and then time goes by. Got the little,
Yep.
little clocks there. Make it go faster. There we go.
Right.
And
Like,
Ringo's
keep going,
back.
keep going.
Kids will just click right through all this crap, by the way. They would never sit here and
Yeah.
read the tutorial.
It's funny, like,
Oh, interesting. Nutrition view.
yeah.
Oh, I see where it's going now. I gotta buy some fertilizer. Nice sound effect.
Yeah.
Alright. There we go. Save up for another
Alright.
farm. I want to farm this entire lake. Fill it with nutrients.
Yeah, so this game was made in partnership with a lab called the Scalable Systems Lab at UW.
Mm-hmm.
And their research is all focused on how we can basically, like, through policy, stop polluting all of the water with phosphates.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Wisconsin, we have a lot of issues with like dairies, manure management, things like that, that lead to our basically all of our waterways going through eutrophication way faster than they actually need to. And so using their research as a spin-off point is how we kind of came to this, well, what would that look like in a strategy game? How do we get across those ideas of nutrient management and how there's like not really a great solution?
Yep.
I also think that it's super relaxing music.
Yep. It's relaxing. Now, have you done the Games for Change Festival? Have you ever attended that or participated in that?
I haven't been to Games for Change. I went to Serious Play this year. Well, went to, didn't happen. But attended virtually.
Right. So that's another one I've been. I wanted to go to that one this year too, but that one didn't happen. So I did Games for Change because it was actually free. So I actually did it. So let's go. More farms, more money. That's what we're talking about.
I'm always intrigued by like the conversations that I can have with kiddos as they're playing this too. Like I've seen some people play that are like, nutrients, I don't need fertilizer, I'm just gonna keep buying more farms. Like, forget the ones that are just going down. Like, I can just throw a new one out there. And they just wind up with like 15.
Right.
Some that refuse to ever add a dairy. If this pans out for you, I always struggle to add dairies early.
I just added the dairy. But maybe that's just me. So eventually I'll pollute this. Well, I see at the lake. I can see the particulates in the lake.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, and so we wanted to make sure that there's always like a base level of nutrition. Thanks for stopping over.
Thanks, Crescent. See you. If you want a link to the game, we'll get you a link to the game. I'll put it in the chat because everyone can play this game. So I'll do that right now, actually. So everyone can have the joy that I do right now, making my farm wonderful as I eat and feed.
Manage your little people.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just enough to like get students started on something without it having to take a long time. And like I imagine you're totally comfortable having a game like last over multiple days.
Well, it depends. So, like, let me, is there a way to turn off the sound? Because now I'm like, all I can hear is the sound blasting in my ears.
You should. So that's actually one of my like issues with it is, but you should be able to turn it off in your browser itself, depending on what browser you use.
Well,
I know in Chrome, if you like right click on the browser
there we
header.
go. Hold on.
What is that called? The menu bar. It should be a
Well, it was popped out, so. Ah, there we go. That's weird. It was a pop out, but I muted it. Okay, now I can. What was the question again?
Now you can think.
As I was teching and troubleshooting.
How comfortable are you with things that last over like multiple days?
Yeah, so it really depends. Like I've done games over multiple days, especially if I just do like 20 minutes of it a day, because I find, especially with younger teenagers, they tire of things so quickly that if you played the same game for 2 days in a row, oh, we're doing this again. I'm like, you loved it yesterday. You were like so excited about it. Today sucked. So it really depends on the kids. But I find usually if it's a game I want to do over multiple days, I'll break it into smaller chunks. So it kind of keeps that, oh, we're going to play it again, going versus you slogged through it for 45 minutes. Right.
Right.
So, it really depends on the game and my intent instructionally. I think that goes for a lot of teachers, where you could play this for just, I got through a lot about stuff that we could talk about already, within the first 10, 15 minutes, like you said. So we could already talk about, well, what's happening to, the nutrients in the soil after a while at the farm. Oh, they disappear. Oh, okay. So what did you have to do? Oh, we had to put fertilizer on it. Okay. So that then you have the conversation, right? And maybe that's what you talk about that day, right? Especially if you only have a 45-minute period. It really can go by really quick. By the time you get out the Chromebooks and everyone gets it open and you do your warm up and you actually play for 20 minutes, you talk about it for 10 minutes at the end of class, you're done, right? And then you come in the next day and you do it all over again. And so, but I think it's fun for games like this if you can get completely different results from the beginning. So it's not the same game. Like you get the land looks different, maybe you start with different levels of soil or whatever. It makes it a little bit different when they come into it. So they're like, oh, I have to do something different this time. Or, you know what? I didn't make a dairy last time. I want to make a dairy this time.
Yeah. Or even, so all of the maps here are like randomly procedurally generated. And so somebody's neighbor might have something that's totally different from theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And so even to have that conversation of like, oh, you're already getting an algae bloom, but Bob isn't. Well, why do you think that might be?
Mm-hmm.
What's different about your towns or different about how you're managing things? Or is it just that there's a difference in the land, like you're saying, like, oh, there's a forest over there and you don't have one. Did that make a difference? Mm-hmm. And you can start layering in those complexities.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it is you don't even necessarily have to know what's happening to play a game sometimes. And I don't know how much of that goes into this, where you're like, where kids aren't necessarily going to be thinking, oh, I need to make sure the lake stays clean, so I'm going to, backwards think. That's how I would think, right? As a science person, I'd be like, oh, I'm being environmentally conscious. I know fertilizers just, the kids don't know.
Right.
Right. They might not know. Idea. They have no idea, and then they're like, oh, there's no fish left. Oh, geez, that's too bad. So anyways, let's I'll unpause it and we can keep going forward here, and see what other mechanics we got involved in this. He's just running around like a crazy person. All right, what? No, stand still. I'm gonna pause you. All right.
You gotta capture him first.
I know, right? All right, let me adjust the size of
we're
this.
actually working on a dashboard for him for this game too, for teachers, so that they can like monitor student progress as they're playing.
Right. You know, and I think that's one of those interesting things about games now. I think before it was important for teachers to be able to monitor progress of kids. Now I can monitor their progress because I'm looking at Go Guardian or Lightspeed or some other program where I can see their screen and I can see where they're at. I won't have a record of it, which some teachers are very picky about, and administrators, like I don't have data showing that they've met the standard. But that's easily done afterwards, where you give them a quiz, on Google Form or something, if you wanted to go that way, or have them write a reflection piece, or however you want to do it. So I think it's kind of interesting that, like, in the past, it's been something teachers have always and administrators have wanted games to have, a way to track kids' progress. Whereas I think now that there's been so much remote teaching and teachers know how to track student progress without that feature, it might be asked for less. I don't know. I'm just guessing here.
Have you taught with a lot of games that had dashboards in them?
Yes. Yeah, I use Legends of Learning quite a bit, and they have a dashboard you can see percents. And if you use, Kahoot or quizzes, and those will all have, a dashboard where you can see student completion rates and things like that as well. So, and like I said, those are great for, I have no food and this guy's starving to death. This is great. I think that's great, especially like there are, I tweeted about this earlier. He died.
Oh no. See, this is what happens to me every time. If I go for the dairy, every time I wind up with a dead person.
I'm gonna put you right next to the cemetery.
Isn't it like it's both the most like happily morbid gravestone ever? Like it just bounces along like.
Yep. I don't know that guy. All right, Belden, you're there instead of Joe or whatever his name was. We forgot already. Check the tombstone.
It's great though when you have like kids will get emotionally invested in their little character.
Always a cute little character, And
I've had kids be like, "No, not Bob." Like,
the soil nutrition around the grave should go up. Bob. That'd be funny. No, I tweeted earlier today about someone was talking about what actual data driven instruction is and whatever, and I was like going on about the semantics in my head between data informed and data driven instruction. And that's just me though, because I get overly attached to certain terminology, and I don't like to use it very often. But because some schools, when it comes to games, some schools, as you probably know, they'll be like, all right, we'll get the games, but we need the data, right? We need to see that we have some kind of data, verifying that yes, we this was a good investment that we made. But your screen froze.
Oh no. Come on, Discord.
Let's go. Usually Discord's better than Meet. There you go. All right, it caught up.
I was gonna say, it said I was green.
Yeah.
It's funny because we do talk a lot about, like, so when I met with teachers about the dashboard for Lakeland, one of our design activities was like, okay, what do you actually want to do with this thing? And yeah, some teachers said, like, well, I want to be able to say that a kid met this standard, or I want to be able to say that a kid understands phosphorus and the role in the ecosystem, which, sure, those are admirable goals, right? Like, we want to know what kids know so that we can move on, like, instead of just sticking on the same thing. But a lot of the focus was actually more on, like, we want to know when a kid is about to be so frustrated that they close their computer. Like, we want to know when a kid has a really unique strategy. Like, when have they figured something out that, like, I want to share with the rest of the class? And I feel like some of that you can definitely get from, you know, just looking at, like Go Guardian or whatever surveillance software you have where you can see their screen, but you can never watch 30 screens at once, right?
Yep. It's really hard, I think, because I don't want kids to get so, and I've seen it happen where kids just rage quit, and I think part of it's just having a good sense as a teacher. I mean, we can't teach you how to relate to your kids, and sometimes, usually, if a kid really rage quits, it's not the game. There is something else going on that sets them off.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's been my experience. I mean, you get to know kids as well. You're gonna be like, all right, I know this kid is gonna rage at this game because I've seen it. I saw it happen last year or last period, and you go to that kid and you're the one helping that kid through. You know, like you said, you're not paying attention to all 30 of them. You can't do that. And that's the downside right now of being remote. It's really hard for a teacher to gauge that body language for kids and know kids. I can know the game really well, and I can know, like, all right, they're going to get to this part, and a couple kids are going to, like, get really frustrated. I want to play in the water. It's funny. But sometimes for me, it's sometimes tough because, and I assume for like other teachers as well, when do you just let them suffer? You know, maybe they need to rage quit, you know, or maybe they should get really frustrated and try again. So, and that's a tough call. You know, I don't think you always know when the best time to do that is. So, man, this poor guy.
Well, yeah,
all
and
eats
like you're
corn.
saying right now, like, that you can't, even if you are in a classroom right now. I mean, I'm thinking, like, right now I have the mental image of our art teacher with her, like, plexiglass around her desk, and because the room isn't big enough for her classes, she has, like, drapes of shower curtains everywhere, you know?
Yep.
But sometimes it's just that, like, standing over their shoulder and being able to play with them.
And there are certain kids you have to do that with. I mean, we know who those kids are usually.
Yeah.
That you kind of have to do that with, but unfortunately you can't always be there for them, especially now. So I killed someone else. I'm just killing them. It's a
tricky game. So it was actually, like, there were less tutorials, but it was I even think harder than it is now. Of course, I've played it probably, I don't even know, probably at least 100 times now, between like playtesting,
Yep.
Presenting on it, so having to play it so that I can get the screenshot that I want. And so now I really like know the pacing that I like to keep in it. But the first couple times through, it was tricky.
Well, it is tricky, and what I find interesting in games, and you have to be prepared for it when using them in class, is you'll have the kid that just figures out the game somehow, and you're like, how did you do that? Like, I've never even done, it's like and then there's the kid that never got past the tutorial, for some reason. You're like, what have you been doing for 20 minutes? Nothing. So
they're just staring there watching the grave.
Yep. So it's funny. Hey, Monty Smith. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. But that's the best part about, you see the kids that actually are really good at it, and then you ask them, and you're like, how did you do that? And they're like, oh, I went into the code. or whatever, they're that's funny. Oh
yeah, no, I had one kiddo who was a high schooler who play tested it for me, and he was I don't know if he was like trying out some new philosophical take on life, but he was like, not gonna do, like, I'm going vegan here. And I was like, okay, you're going vegan, so you're not gonna have a dairy? Is that what you're telling me? He's like, yeah, no dairies. But one of those, like, how on earth did you do that? Had like 25 farms. I had never seen somebody have such a big, like, setup before. Had all these workers. I was like, what? How?
It's amazing. Like, I love it when you see kids do that, and you're just like, and sometimes they just have, depending on the game, they have a brain for it. They get it. It's kind of like when you watch, certain people, streamers or whatever, playing games, and you're just like, how do you do that? Especially for a kid, this is the first time they played a game, and a lot of times they know the mechanics of that kind of game, so they've played games like Surviving Mars or Sim City or City Skylines. They kind of know resource management games, which essentially is what it is. And so they might have an advantage, of course. And then the other thing that shouldn't be a surprise to people is that not all kids are gamers, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like they're really not gamers. Like, we're like, so what games do you play at home? We don't play games. Like, what do you mean you don't play games? Like, it's culturally, whatever their background is, they have no concept of games, which is sad to me, but understandable. And not all kids are gamers either. But in essence, this is just a really nice simulation.
Yeah. That kiddo, he did cop to playing a lot of Harvest Moon at one point in his life. So he was like well primed for this. I really also like when kiddos recognize that the lake is the low point. So I don't know if you actually had it rain yet.
No, I have not. I'm surprised these crops are growing at all.
Yeah, to ruin the surprise, at a certain point, it does rain, which then all of the manure starts shifting around.
Shifting, huh?
Uh-huh. And so they would realize that if you just put your farms in a diagonal leading to the lake,
Oh, okay.
And then just put your fertilizer far away, you could just like direct it to slide all the way across. And I was like, you guys are ingenious. Like,
That's no, that was that intentional by the developers? I mean, do you know that they did that for that reason?
So that was just like kids figuring it out. It was intentional in the like how does runoff work, that lakes are the low point. So the lakes are always the low point, and like in the simulation there are like quote unquote elevations
Right.
that have different levels, and like even the different substrates. So like the rock has a different absorption for fertilizer than like the grass does or the farms do.
Okay, that's good. So Monty Seamus, haha, college money going into tier 3 sub. Go burr. Outside, go burr. It is cold outside, at least where we are. I know about up in Wisconsin, but I walked the dogs today. It was only 24 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oof. Ouch.
It's supposed to get warmer by Friday, though. So, thankfully. I keep telling myself, though, I'm like, look, it's global climate change. It'll be warm, but that's a bad thing. I will say it was a bad thing because it was only like last week when it was like really warm here. It was like in the 70s. And I was like, and there was a mosquito. I'm like, really? It is November. There should be no mosquitoes in November. That's one of the benefits of living in a climate where it freezes, is you have no insects for 5 to 6 months or whatever, Don't
yeah, we definitely still had a couple last week, but it's like fluctuated. Like you said, it was super cold, and now tomorrow it's supposed to be like 60 again. So who knows? The following day it might snow. It's Wisconsin. It's a coin flip.
Yep. So when it gets cold in Wisconsin, it gets cold in Wisconsin. So, but New York State does have one of the coldest areas, now that we've digressed into talking about the weather. Saranac Lake, always, if you look on like coldest places in the country, it's like Saranac Lake sometimes makes that list in New York because it's very central in the Adirondack Mountains. So it gets really cold. There we go. Look at that. I'll leave that corn for you. I've got 2 successful farms here, so I'm doing pretty good. Now it wants me to build the dairy, though. I don't know if I want to build that dairy, though. The last time I built the dairy...
More for another year.
Last time I built the dairy, it all went...
See, that's what I'm saying. You have to have the, like... You have to have a bunch of farms system before you go to the dairy.
Yep. It's pronounced Seamus. Yeah, I know, but I had a bad case of the stupids today. I can't read and talk at the same time. Okay, let's sell that. And we'll leave that for him to eat. The key is always leaving 1 corn for him to eat to keep him alive. You can never get rid of all of them. So yeah, I've figured that out.
You get the kids who get burned really easy or really early too, and they turn into doomsday preppers. Like
they have all the corn out there and they're not selling it.
Like hundreds of them just hanging out. And I'm like, you could move the game along if you just sold some of those. And they're like, no, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die if I...
It already happened once.
Like, but you... Like, I think you have plenty. Like, you have enough for the next, like, hour. It's funny, one of the teachers who helped with design, because we always bring groups of teachers in to, like, consult and help with thinking through the design and doing play testing and things like that, their kiddos played during class and tried to get it to like the optimal state where they had enough farms that were just generating food and enough farms that were generating like sales so that they could just let it keep running overnight. And they just let it keep going.
Awesome. That's what
just let their
like.
town go. And it was like a competition amongst the kids in his class to like see how much could they actually grow and make money wise by the next morning.
Yep. Well, I could see kids definitely getting into this. And I had a game I was playing with. There was a group at NYU that's doing a Mars survival game, and we did a play test for them, and it was similar to this, except you were farming on Mars instead of farming here. And the kids like they played it through lunch. You know, I'm like, all right, they're in lunch trying to grow crops on Mars. Okay. You know, and they played it till like the next day. So like I said, some games, but they have that playability, you know, certain kids will really get into it, and it's good, you know, to have that. And sometimes I think what they learn, it's sometimes hard to quantify, you know. And that's why I think sometimes it's tough when you try to be data driven. You might not catch what they learned if it's a multiple choice question. But if you ask them or talk to them about it, they could explain a little bit more to you.
Yeah, that's where like I think the idea of having like back-end analytics is really interesting too, though, is that like a multiple choice question can always only tell you so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like actual behavior and actually like, what did somebody do in the moment, like what choices are they making, both to open up a conversation and say like, oh, I saw you did this and this is what we think, like this is what I thought you were doing, or was that the best strategy? But also to like draw teachers' attention to it. Because I think games that sometimes offer a really unique opportunity for us to see kids in a different light. Like they're like you're saying, there are some kids who like aren't very good at games, but there are some that are way better at gaming than they are at school.
Yep. Oh yeah. And I think it's a matter of, you know, doing what you, providing the instruction that you know will work, or you think will work with the kids that you have. So, and that's knowing your students. And I think I'm always double down on games myself. That's just the way I am. Because usually you can't go wrong. I mean, so much of like the new standards are systems thinking. I mean, this has like the new standards all over it, right? You can talk about making observations and having evidence and making claims and systems thinking and patterns and all that. It's all there.
Yeah, I have been like really interested in the whole systems thinking thing since playing around with this, because I feel like that's also one of the things that's really hard to get at in a classroom, like to actually see without having a simulation or a game that you can like take action and watch what happens and see the consequences and then try to like figure out why things happen and how to fix them. Nothing works fast enough in real life.
Yeah. You have to do a game or at least a simulation if you're doing systems. I mean, that's just, it's, I don't know how else you could do it. You can't actually, you might be able to do it with like yeast or something in an experiment, but when you look at actual scientists and what they do, they use data modeling, which is in a way the simulation. All we're doing with this is we're modeling it with graphics and a nice GUI and everything. But I think and a lot of teachers, I think, especially not to bust on the older teachers, I am one now, but especially the really older teachers that think the only real science you can do is like in a lab doing wet chemistry with a beaker or with your yeast and your cells, and they don't realize that so much of research right now is just data sets. That's all it is. It's like, go to GitHub, get your data set, and then process the data and publish a paper. Is there still the other stuff too? Yeah, but especially I was chatting with Professor Matt Bellis, the physicist, and he just gets data from CERN, from the Large Hadron Collider. He just gets all that data in, and him and his colleagues that he works with on that process that data, and they search for trends within the data. So
that totally makes sense that would be the direction. That's actually one of the things that we're trying to get at with Aqualab in that modeling mechanic. And it's a little bit, that's actually the one mechanic that we're really most excited to revamp. But like you saw with how there's the basically it's a agent-based model.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of the rules that you create by making observations and doing experiments, you can pull over to your model and then use that model to extrapolate and move beyond, like, this is actually what we think is going to happen going forward.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I've been learning a lot more since doing these chats, and I've been talking to a lot more people at the college level. I know you have because you're in a PhD program, but I've been like out of academia for a long time. I haven't talked to anybody in academia, and there's a lot of K-12 teachers that's the way it is. It's like, I'm out of college, not talking to those people again, those professors and academics. And I think that's kind of disservice. It's just like if you're a high school teacher and you're like, I'm never talking to an elementary school teacher. It's like, well, why not? I mean, we're all educators. And so, bro, where is Sid the science kid? I don't know. I think he's this tombstone right here. I think he's the tombstone. No. Oh no. No, definitely Sid the science kid is not here, or Bill Nye the science guy. All right, what's up, Vinny Gaming? Welcome in. We're talking games. Go figure, particularly educational games. Now, we can change the topic here a little bit about this as far as the game that's made for industry versus the game that's made for education, right? And because something like Subnautica, like which we talked about earlier, is like a really high level game. Graphics are crazy. The gameplay is amazing, and then a lot of investment has been put into that. Versus a game like this, which is really cool, but its obvious intent is to teach, whereas that game is
right, and it's meant to be a 20-minute, like, one and done.
Right. Now, is there a place for both? I know, and you know, that there are some, like, either game people or educator people that are like, God, those educational games are just awful. Why would you use those when you could use these high quality games to teach the same subject that the kids are going to be more into? So what are your thoughts on that argument? Because I know you've heard it before. being in games and ed. I've heard it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just your intention, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I could go both ways. So the first thing that comes to mind isn't even a like game, but I feel like it's almost the same parallel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could say the same thing for like film. You can have documentaries that are clearly like science-based documentaries that are meant to teach, or you could have like really entertaining films that, when used in a certain way, are equally as useful to conveying like educational content. And the one that comes to mind is actually Avatar, like the blue people Avatar,
right?
Not the Airbender Avatar. And I used to use that all the time in my middle school classroom, especially when we were doing things like classifying living organisms and talking about the different types of life. We would actually watch Avatar in class and kind of go through, like, if we were what is his name, Linnaeus, the guy who invented the actual classification system, and like create scientific names, the whole deal. And it really helped students to like step outside, because there was no right or wrong answer there,
right?
or just use it as content. And so I think you can do the same thing with, you know, you want to talk physics, go play GTA. Like,
yeah. And I also think it's, for me, I always think in terms of, you know, you want the right tool for the right job. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's fair to discount something for any particular reason that you might have a bias against. But if you feel that a certain game is the right tool for the right job, then yeah, all right, that's good. That will hopefully, you know, work. I mean, it's you know, because you have a lot of options sometimes in how you teach something. So if you try it and it doesn't work, or you try something else, or, you know, in the chat they're talking about, you know, ask students. I'm like, well, yeah. I mean,
GTA doesn't have physics. How else do you do, like? Oh, come on! You have not watched clearly enough car jump videos.
I don't think they understand that. Remember when it was sometime it was in the spring, and they were updating the Unreal Engine to a new physics engine. They were putting the new physics engine into it, and it really didn't make too much of a difference, other than like in Fortnite, the explosions could look more realistic because they added a new physics engine to the game. So, and that's one where sometimes it can backfire if you use a popular game in class, because unless you do it right, you've taken something that they value and you've sullied it. You know, you've kind of,
right,
you know, you've tried to do something cool with it and you failed, and therefore it's fail.
Not fun anymore.
Right, you took something fun and you ruined it. Right. And I've had that happen to me before, and so you have to be careful, because you could definitely end up being like the imposter, right? So I'm almost getting close to another home, by the way. I'm getting close.
Are you gonna be able to feed 2 people with 4 farms?
Hey, I don't know. I'm getting pretty close. I'm earning enough money so I can at least break even, I think, depending on how much fertilizer I have to use. But I might try to. Yeah. I might try a dairy. I could try a dairy again, except I'll put it upstream so all the fertilizer flows down onto it. See, this is where I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, I should get a different crop. I should grow, instead of corn, I should be able to grow potatoes, or a cash crop of some kind, like hops.
Yeah, so that's a super good example about like this does a really specific job, but if you were to take something like even the old school Sim Farm, right? I don't know if you remember.
I remember.
Or if you ever played that. I was a geek and I played all the like Sim games.
I played a bunch.
Sim Safari was my favorite.
I played Sim Earth. That's how I learned all my Earth science, by the way.
That's awesome.
Seriously, it came with the textbook. Oh yeah, you can find it online. There's like a browser version now. But it came with like a textbook. It was like, you know, when they used to come with books, they get the box for the game and it would come with like a book with it. This one came with like a book. And it was cool because it had all the planets and you could adjust the axial tilt and like the different parameters for the variables of the planet. So you could turn it into Mars or Venus or Earth, depending on, you know, the specs you gave your planet. But anyways, I also did Sim Ant. I had Sim Ant as well. Anyways, go ahead. You were saying you had the Sim game.
Oh yeah, and like that was one of the things you could do is you would have to like rotate your crops or else you would wind up with pests and certain things would cause chaos. Whereas it wasn't meant to be an educational game, but it winds up being one.
Yep. And I think those are the ones that kind of really meet that happy medium. And a lot of those are the resource management games. Go figure. That become educational for that reason. So
it's all about like relationships and things, right? Even I suppose those are still resource management games. I'm thinking of all the like battle games that you have where you're moving troops around and I know that I've had several people that were more like social studies focused that have used those types of games in class too.
Yep.
Trying to think if there's a better game than like resource management, but probably not.
Well, like Civ 5 and games like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I was a social studies teacher, I would be using like Assassin's Creed and the Civilization games to teach everything. I think that would be my go-to. Science doesn't have like that level. What the social studies type history games have is the storytelling piece, which I think is really good. And that's one of the things that a lot of like science games are resource management because there's no story to tell necessarily. And I think that's something, this game's pretty good. It has a little story to it, right?
They try. Yeah.
Right. And as we know, some gamers love the story, right? They play games for the story. They'll put it on easy mode and go through a game just so they get the plot. They want to have the story, not necessarily the shooting or any of that stuff. So
right.
So, by the way, these are all my students in chat. I think they're all stalking me, and they're listening to my secret teaching philosophy. So what I did was on our Discord I put in a bot. So it would, and they were streaming, like some of them are streamers, and they were posting when they were going live, and they're like, well, I can make a bot. I'll put a bot in there that'll notify when they go live. I'm like, then I forgot. I was like, oh, that's right. It's going to notify them when I go live too. so whatever. It's time for you guys to go to bed though. It's 10:40. You got school in the morning. So do I. Got period 3, right, first thing. Right, Penny? No, I'm definitely not Aiden. Just like in when we were playing Among Us, and everyone was not so-and-so, right? Not Vinny, not Aiden, not whatever, right. All right, he must have just eaten. He's in his pool. Go here. All right.
Yeah. That is the worst part about like any of the Kahoot. Like, who are these people?
Oh, they have to use their names right, boot them. It's how I take attendance now. Otherwise, they don't exist.
Fair. Yeah, I suppose that does simplify things.
It is, and I don't think the students realize, and a lot of people understand how hard it is to take attendance of like 30 people that are kind of sometimes coming into a class and sometimes leaving a class or getting kicked off the meet, or it's just like chaos. So anything to help out. So I sleep for 15 hours a day because I'm sleepy. Okay. Do you also live with bashful and sneezy? Funny. Trying to think what else they're putting in chat. Anyways, we are going to finish up. You know, I mean, we've been chatting for an hour and a half. As I said the last time we talked, I'm like, that hour went by that we chatted last time, like that, you know.
I know.
So.
I'm just like highly intrigued. So you did get to play a little bit of Lakeland, or not Lakeland, of Aqualab, and go through some of the things. What were the things that are interesting to you about it as a game for class? And what things were you like, why is that there?
Okay, as far as like this is my beta tester feedback. See, a lot of it, I don't know what you've already intended on changing versus what I noticed, you know. One thing is, it's like there's only a few things to scan, and that's one of the things I figure in the future there'll be more types of things to scan, because when you go to your tank in your lab and you put in, you know, your system, so you see how like the number of urchins go up and the kelp goes down, you know, that was good. The one thing that wasn't done in that case, that I'm trying to think back to when I played it, it wasn't obvious that it was quantified somehow. It was just kind of like, oh, the kelp went down, versus like showing a graph or the actual numbers of, oh, we had 5 and now we have 1. And because sometimes that's the leap where the kids can't make it from that abstract to the quantified, you know, variables. So that's just one thing, but I don't know if that would ruin it, because that would make it too much like a science class, you know. So, but that's just something I noted. But it is something that if you were in a lab, you would write down in your notebook, you know, there were 5, now there's 1, you know, just so it's obvious, you know, what happened.
We did talk a little bit about that, of like how do you give students like the opportunity to make meaning of their own data? Because I think it's still true that in the demo it's like you're doing your little experiment and then it basically tells you like, hey, this is what happened.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Whereas like later it might actually have like variables in it, like how much did this happen? So urchins eat kelp, okay, cool, but like, do they eat a lot of it? Do they eat just some of it? Mm-hmm. Do they eat 8 of them?
Right. But I don't know if you need to get into that level of detail. Yeah, it's more of like you have the tank has the kelp in it and you pour them in, you know, bloop, and you're like, oh, just like in the wild, they're eating it, you know, because you saw it eating it in, you know, in the wild in your initial observation.
Right.
So, oh, the auto mod caught one of you guys. Don't make me ban you. Naughty, naughty. All right. Yes, I did posture and I did my tea. I'm having tea tonight. So I felt like having some chamomile and mint tonight to
Nice.
soothe my throat and hydrate.
Good way to relax.
Yep. Trying to relax a little bit, but anyways, we are going to finish up the stream because I do want to get to bed at some decent hour, since I did go to bed a little bit later last night. So I want to get to sleep tonight, so I'm fresh and eager to teach my beautiful little urchins in the morning.
Well, yeah, thanks for letting me come hang out and chat, and
Yep.
for playing through some Aqualab and giving some feedback. Appreciate it.
Hey, not a problem. Thanks for being here. Final words to our wonderful chat that picked up after my trolling student stopped by. I do watch Dr. Stone. Every science person should watch Dr. Stone if they don't. And I was Dr. Stone for Halloween, if you didn't notice that. But that was interesting. I still have the wig. So that'll be my fun cosplay from now on.
Nice.
So, but yeah, it was wonderful having you on, Jen, and we'll definitely have you back on for a chat later to see like maybe where Aqualab goes, and if you want to have I'll have my students do some beta testing. I'm always up for that. We'll give feedback. So I'm always happy to do that as well, even though it doesn't even fit in with my curriculum. For physical science, I can definitely put it in when we do environmental issues in the spring as well. But
yeah, well, we're hoping that we should have a much more scaled thing by January. We're hoping to have like 3 different jobs that'll actually be strung together, and then it'll just keep growing through the spring is when we're really hoping to have a lot of student play. So awesome. Yeah, I would appreciate that.
Yep, that would be great. Now we're going to do what we do on Twitch, and we are going to raid another channel. We're going to go and we're going to raid another channel. So hopefully, we'll go in and we'll look and we'll see. I got a couple channels that we can check out. So those of my students that are still here, you can. I think retro. They're playing some retro games, so you might even like that, Jen, if you like retro gaming. So Decaf Jedi is doing that. So we'll see about getting that raid going. That'll be fun. And thanks for everyone hanging out. All the follows appreciated. Remember, if you are a student, please don't give me bits or subs. I don't want any monetary compensation at all. Just hanging out is fine. So let's find someone to raid here. Yes, looks like one of the original Space Quests. So, see you later. I'll be streaming Surviving Mars on Friday, probably.
Cool.
So, that'll be the next stream, and no guest next week because it's Thanksgiving week. So,
yeah. Makes sense.
Bye.
Thanks so much. See ya.
Thank you for the raid very much. Glad you could make it here. If you're just popping in with Science Streams, how's it going, Science Streams? I hope you're having a good evening. I appreciate you bringing some people over. We are playing Space Quest Zero, a Space Quest fan game from 2003. Right now we are trying to uncover a massive cloning conspiracy